Now, there's a current assumption that the only way to pay for the stimulus checks, these like coronavirus stimulus checks, is to go for the nation to go into further debt. I'm claiming that is not the case. We do not have to go into further debt to issue more stimulus checks, which we should do for help people get by, be able to, so they could pay their bills, the working class Americans, while they are in lockdown. And the way to do that would be to bypass the Federal Reserve, for one thing. I should also note that it's common misconception is that the Federal Reserve banking system is part of the US federal government. That is a false assumption. And for some reason, the progressives on the left never seem to understand that. The only people that seem to understand that is what I would call like the populist alternative right-leaning people on videos or articles. They're the ones that you typically learn from them that they typically do understand that the Federal Reserve is not a part of the not part of the federal government, and it's ironic they are often the ones more on the right leaning that are the most critical of the Federal Reserve. It's ironic because if we were to end the Fed, and the Fed is, when you hear about the Fed in reference to finance and the economy, that's in reference to the Federal Reserve banking system, and so and you hear for calls to end the Fed, and the irony in that the ones that are calling for to end the Fed are predominantly on the right-leaning anti-government types, and the irony there is that if we were to end the Fed's control of monetary policy and control of the money supply, then presumably the organization that would take over the duties, the jobs of the Fed would be the U.S. government, the US Treasury, which is part of the U.S. federal government. And so in doing so, the Treasury would become bigger and have more power, and thereby, as a result, overall, the U.S. government would get bigger and have more power. And so that's just ironic there, that the people on the right, so the anti-government types, are the ones that are calling to end the Fed, which would inevitably result in the U.S. government getting bigger and more powerful. Now I'm a progressive lefty, I'd consider myself, but so I'm less concerned about the government getting bigger. I think the U.S. government should get bigger. I think we should nationalize more, like any businesses that require a bailout. Instead of just bailing them out, just giving them money, we should nationalize those businesses instead. Either don't give them anything or fully nationalize any business, especially the large corporations that need a bailout. I'm not talking like the small mom and pop businesses, but the large corporations. If they need a significant bailout, we should just nationalize them indefinitely. But I'm getting a little kind of off track here. I want to focus on the idea. I just wanted to make a fairly short video here of presenting an idea of how to continue supporting the working class Americans during this coronavirus shutdown. Provide more, get the working class more stimulus checks, and do so without having the public debt get even higher than it is already. It's already really ballooning, and it's not necessary, I'm claiming. And the way to avoid incurring more debt would be a simple process of, like I said, ordering the Fed to mint some $1 trillion coins. However many trillion, or however many trillions are needed to issue some more stimulus checks to fund that for the working class. So if we need 10 trillion more dollars for the stimulus, then the U.S. Mint, which is part of the U.S. federal government, could be ordered to create 10 $1 trillion coins, and then order the Mint to deposit those coins into the accounts of the U.S. Treasury, and then for all the future stimulus payments, that can be drawn from that account in the Treasury to pay the checks out. So that way we would be bypassing the Federal Reserve, because, like, as you know, if you look at any paper money, it always says on there Federal Reserve. So because those dollars are produced by the Federal Reserve banking system, which is not part of the U.S. government. But coins, you do not see Federal Reserve on them, because they are not created by that private Fed, the Federal Reserve banking system. Coins are minted by the U.S. government, by the U.S. Mint. So you just, whether it's a penny, nickel, dime, quarter, those are all created by the U.S. government. It bypasses any coin created bypasses the Federal Reserve, and it's made by the U.S. government. It increases the money supply. Anytime a coin is made, by however much many coins are made, that increases the money supply, and it's also a debt-free. So there's no debt involved that needs to be paid back. It's debt-free. It's a fiat currency. It increases the money supply, and it bypasses the Federal Reserve banking system. So if we're already doing that with nickels, dimes, quarters, pennies, why not do that with some $1 trillion coins as well? There's just no need to. We don't have to go through the Federal Reserve. We don't have to take out issue more treasury bonds, T-bills. The government does not have to take out more debt to pay for these coins. We can just mint them. Just the same as we don't have to take out more debt when more quarters are made. They're just minted, and that's put out into the money supply. Those quarters are however much amount of money is minted. That much money goes out into the into the currency, into the money supply, and thereby people use it and pay for things, and it's spent it increases the demand. And that's one thing we need right now is more demand, because there's fewer paychecks that are people receiving, so they have less money to spend. So now if we mint some $1 trillion coins, then we can just put that into the money supply, debt-free, without creating any more debt. Just mint some $1 trillion coins, deposit the coins in the Treasury, and then by however many trillions of dollars, and how many $1 trillion coins are put in the Treasury, the money is now going to be available to send out stimulus checks to working class Americans, and it would not increase the U.S. debt 1 cent. It's a viable option, but I have not heard anything from anybody in either mainstream or alternative media talking about trillion-dollar coins. However, I do recall hearing a little bit about, it was suggested during the Great Recession after the financial crisis that started in 2008. I did hear mentioning a trillion-dollar coin, but I have not heard anything about it. So I'm putting this out here. Maybe I'm the first since the start of the coronavirus. Maybe I'm going to be the first one on your YouTube to suggest it. Maybe not. Maybe so. I'm saying yes, we should do that. We should make some multiple trillion-dollar coins, debt-free fiat currency that we could draw upon to spend some more stimulus money for working class people and small businesses, and not corporations. If corporations need a bailout, we'll just nationalize them. We should just nationalize the corporations, take them over. Yeah, so or at least we should be getting shares. I don't even know if we're getting any shares of the corporations. At least when I think in the last crisis, at least we got some shares of the corporations when they were bailed out. I mean, the U.S. government did, but I don't know if that's even happening this time around. It's a good question, but that's not really the main topic of this video. Main topic I wanted to focus on is the trillion-dollar coin idea. I want to put it out there. Maybe I'm the first on YouTube, but regardless, doesn't matter. But it matters if this idea should get some traction. I hope. But yeah, that's my idea. I hope it happens. I don't know what the likelihood of it happening, but I think it's a good idea. Also ironic is that justifiably hear from a lot of the people and folks on the populist progressive left that they're justifiably critical of these big banks, the largest banks in the nation, for a lot of their actions. But they're the ones that are the shareholders of the Federal Reserve. They're the ones that own and operate the Federal Reserve banking system. The biggest banks are, I'm saying. They're the shareholders. They're the ones that are running the Fed, the Federal Reserve. Now, like you hear about this. Now, Congress has a little bit of oversight, supposedly, of the Fed. The Congress has given the Fed a dual mandate to increase employment and control inflation, limit inflation. But and also I think there's some ability of Congress to look at the books, the accounting books of the Federal Reserve. But I've never heard of actually the Congress holding the Fed accountable for any of their actions, because I think the Fed can always give some plausible reason why their actions are done to improve employment or control inflation. For whatever they do, they can always say, "Oh yeah, that's to improve employment," or that's to control inflation. That's why we did what we did. But there's no way to verify that that's the reason they did it. I mean, and also, even if the Congress can look at the books, whatever they did, the Fed can say, "Oh yeah, we did that to improve employment and control inflation," and they can always give some plausible explanation, even though for all we know, the real reason that the Fed does what they do is maybe they're using it to their own advantage. There's a huge conflict of interest here. If it's the bankers are running it, how do we know that they're not just using their knowledge to their own advantage at the expense of the American public? For instance, after the last during the Great Recession, there's all these quantitative easing or QE programs that were implemented by the Fed, and what the Fed would do, they can mint money. Yeah, they were making money out of nowhere and using that money to buy from the big banks, typically, debt. So they buy debt from from these large financial institutions, and then what would those financial institutions do with that money? Well, it seems like what they did was buy stocks in the stock market, and now I'm thinking, well, if they're buying, if the Fed is buying these bonds, these I think like debt bonds, the type of thing, from these big banks. Now, aren't these big banks also the shareholders of the Fed? So I would think that they would. Everybody knows what's going on, wouldn't they? I mean, and it's like a really bad kept secret that it seems like what happened was, they bought, these big banks bought shares in the stock market. All this money from QE went directly into the stock market, trillions of dollars, I believe, in these rounds of QE. So if they know they're going to do that, then that would increase the demand in the stock market in general. When you increase the demand for something, for a limited supply, that's going to increase the price. Economics 101. So I think that they should have known that would increase the, if they knew they were going to do that, turn around and buy shares in the stock market, they would know that would increase the overall price of the stock market. Now, it sounds like insider trading in a way, but now I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know about what constitutes insider trading, what does not. But I thought insider trading was typically like an individual company, an individual corporation. That there were certain laws specific to that, but I don't know if there's any insider trading laws in terms of something like if a big bank shareholder or the Fed knows that overall the actions that the Fed does is going to cause the overall stock market to increase. So if anybody with that knowledge could just buy a mutual fund or an ETF that generally tracks the stock market in general, and they'll know that it's with a high degree of confidence based on their knowledge that they have and everybody else does not have. They know that the stock market's going to go up. Now, I didn't know that. I mean, if anybody that had that knowledge would have known that would have been about time to buy as soon as they were planning on implementing the rounds of QE near the bottom of the price of the stock market. So that would be almost a sure thing to know that the stock market's going to go up. And so the Fed can say, oh yeah, we implemented QE to improve employment, because of justifying it with a trickle-down economics theory that as the value of the stocks go up, that's going to improve the confidence in the overall economy and cause the people are going to be more likely to spend money, and businesses are going to do better. And of course, what happened is that the wealthiest just got extremely much more wealthy due to this QE and the stock market going way up. They get the top like 0.1% and above. They're really got even much more wealthy as a result of the Fed's actions. And while unemployment may have dropped, yes, it's true. The Fed's actions probably did lower the unemployment and increased employment, but it did not increase the wages hardly at all. They're just like a little bit higher. Maybe a little bit, but so little that now that we are facing this coronavirus crisis, as soon as people are without one paycheck, we have this massive economic crisis that necessitates these stimulus checks, and that just shows that that it's not enough to improve lower the unemployment rate if people that are employed are getting such low wages that they can't save enough so that they can get by without one paycheck. And it shows how the Federal Reserve is not looking after the interests of the working class Americans. It's not working. We do need to do away with the Federal Reserve System, that is owned and operated by the largest banks in America, with a tremendous conflict of interest. We need to repeal the Federal Reserve Act and let the US Treasury take over controlling monetary policy and the money supply. And it's just my $1 trillion coin idea is just a temporary workaround. Until we repeal the Federal Reserve Act, we can bring back control to our monetary policy and control monetary policy and control the money supply in the interests of the common American citizen, rather than looking after, instead of as it currently is, we have a central bank, the Federal Reserve, is looking after the interest of the top 0.1% and above, rather than the 99.9% or the rest of the country. So, but in the meantime, let's do a workaround and start minting some $1 trillion coins and depositing those coins into the U.S. Treasury. And one more thing. It was during President Lincoln's administration. That was a while before we ever had a Federal Reserve, private central bank. Lincoln issued what was called the greenback. The Lincoln greenback dollar was issued during the Lincoln presidency, and that was a dollar, debt-free fiat currency issued by the U.S. Treasury, and it was distributed. Now that was more like a QE for the people, the Lincoln greenback dollar, and the result was a relatively high degree of widespread middle-class prosperity, without any significant inflation problems. Now, we always need to be concerned about inflation, yes, but as long as it's done in a controlled manner, the money printing of a fiat currency, and it's controlled for making sure that there's a fairly even ratio of between the money supply and the supply of goods and services. As long as there's not a big imbalance happens. But what does happen, and is a good result, is that when you increase the money supply into the middle class, working class population, that increases demand, and that has a knock-on effect of increasing the supply of goods and services. So it's a beneficial relationship when you increase the money supply for the middle class, working class economy. So they have all this more extra money to spend, and then there's the businesses have this demand because people have lots more money to spend on goods and services, and so the businesses respond by creating the goods and services to meet that demand, that increased demand. So you can avoid having a problem with the excess inflation, because there's a balance that's maintained that way between the demand on the demand side and the supply side. Because when you increase the demand side, the supply side responds, and so they both you could say almost synergistically rise in tandem. the supply side rises in response to the increase on the demand side. And so that's how you can avoid having these big problems with hyperinflation involving fiat currency, increasingly having a fiat currency that increases in supply. And you can even use the fiat currency money, increase that to pay off old debt, as long as that has to be done in a controlled manner as well, in a timed sequence. It's timed ahead of time to pay for old debts. They have to be very careful there, but I think it can be done as long as it's planned out ahead of time, long term into the future. This is going to print out this so much amount of money to pay off these debts in a timed manner. Over time, and it can even also pay off debts even that way. I think that's the way to go. We need to end the Fed and bring back the control of money supply and monetary policy to the US Treasury, or genuinely a part of the US federal government. Yeah, right.